Yesterday we talked about one-step conversions using dimensional analysis. Today we're going to be talking about multiple step conversions, and we are still using dimensional analysis. Now if you see multiple step conversions, you're probably thinking there's going to be more than one step. And if you think back to train tracks, that probably means there's going to be a couple more terms. We're going to look at an example problem. We're going to decide, or we're going to convert 1 year into minutes. So we will decide how many minutes are in a year. Right now, I don't know how many minutes are in a year. But I do know how many minutes are in an hour. So I'm going to write 60 minutes equals 1 hour. I also know how many hours are in a day. 24 hours equals 1 day. That doesn't get me quite to a year, but I do know how many days are in a year. I know that 1 year equals 365 days. In my question, I'm going to find my given, my unknown, and my conversion factors that I need. My given is going to be a year. Notice it's a year, but I also know, as my math teacher, a can mean 1. So I'm looking at my given 1 year. My unknown will be how many minutes, because that's my question being asked. So my unknown will be minutes. My E will be all of my conversion factors. I have 3 different conversion factors. I know that 1 year equals 365 days. I also know that 1 day is the same as or equals 24 hours. And I know that 1 hour equals 60 minutes. I can also remember that when I have a conversion factor, I can write it 2 ways. I can write it as a fraction like this, or I can write the reciprocal like this. So remember, each conversion factor can be written 2 different ways. When I write my conversion factor, I want to write it as what? I want to write it as a fraction. Because when we use our setup, we are using fractions. Because remember, multiple step conversions, we are just doing dimensional analysis. That means we are at the S now. We are at setup. So we're still following that same pattern. What do we always start with during our setup? Right, we always start with our given. My given is 1 year, so that means for my first term, I'm going to have 1 year. Now, the 2 questions we ask for our setup, these will help guide us through choosing what conversions factors to use and how we're going to set them up. So, keeping that in mind, I see I have 1 year here. The first question is, do units cancel? In order to cancel out my units, that means a year has to be at the bottom of my next term. I know that I've already used my G, my given, so I can't use it again. So I'm looking for another year, and I have to look at my E. So here I see that 1 year equals 365 days. So I'm going to use this term. So I already used 1 year. Now I'm going to use 365 days at the top, because I know that 1 year equals 365 days. So I've used my 365 days. So I know I have to ask the question, do units cancel? Right now, my year is at the top and at the bottom, so yes, my units cancel. So the second question, am I left with the unknown? So I ask myself the second question, am I left with the unknown? Let's look. Years canceled, I'm left with days. Is that the unknown? No, it's not. I'm looking for minutes. So I need another term. Remember, we want to cancel out the units. So if I have days at the top of this term, where will days be on my next term? Right, days will be at the bottom. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to write day. I go back up to my conversion factors. I see that 1 day equals 24 hours. So I have to pair off my 1 day with 24 hours. So I use my 1 day and my 24 hours. Can't use them again. All right, let's go back to our questions. Do units cancel? Do you see any units that can cancel? Right, days can cancel, so I'm going to cancel those out. Second question, am I left with the unknown? No, I'm not. I'm left with hours. I'm looking for minutes. That means I need to cancel out hours. So I need at least one more term so I can put hours at the bottom. All right? So now I know I can cancel these out. I have to go back to my conversion factors. I see that 1 hour, so I'm going to put 1 hour at the bottom, equals 60 minutes. So I put 60 minutes at the top. All right, let's ask ourselves those two questions. Well, first, I'm going to cross off this conversion factor because I've already used it. Now 1, do units cancel? Well, I see hour and hour, so yes, units cancel. Am I left with the unknown? Yes, I am. I'm left with minutes. That matches my unknown. That tells me I have this set up correctly. Because I have this set up correctly, I can plug this into my calculator and solve. So now we can answer Red's question, how many minutes are in a year, by putting in 1 times 365 divided by 1 times 24 divided by 1 times 60 divided by 1. So when we put this into our calculator, we could write it a little differently, but we're going to find that in 1 year, which has 365 days, and each day has 24 hours, and each hour has 60 minutes, there are going to be 525,600 minutes. And remember, I know that unit is minutes because that was the unit that was left after all my other units were canceled out. Now I'm going to show you a potential other setup, and I want you to look and tell me if you think it's right or not. So let's say I'm trying to decide how many inches are in 3 miles. So I know I'm looking for how many inches are in 3 miles. Now my question, just a reminder, is going to be how many inches are in 3 miles? Well, what is wrong with my setup? Now, my first term, my given, this term is correct. Let's go through and look to see if we can answer our 2 questions. Do units cancel? Am I left with the unknown? So starting with units canceling, miles, feet. Do units cancel? No. So this tells me I have the incorrect setup, and I cannot use this setup. Let's look at another one. How many centimeters are in 3 kilometers? All right. I now am going to start with 3 kilometers. I want you to tell me what is wrong with this setup. Well, my first question is, do units cancel? Let's look. Kilometers, kilometers. Yep, units cancel. My second question, though, was, am I left with the unknown? Is that our unknown? Are we looking for the number of meters in 3 kilometers? No, we're not. We're looking for the number of centimeters in 3 kilometers. That means I need to cancel out meters, and I know that 1 meter has 100 centimeters. This would be the correct setup for the question answering how many centimeters are in 3 kilometers. Because now kilometers cancel, meters cancel, and I'm left with my unknown. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I try to check them as much as I can.